changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Tip Tuesday, and that's when we talk about an easy-to-implement, life-changing tip from one of our stories. What I love about these stories is that they're written by regular people, and they pass on their best ideas, ones that regular people can use. We don't have to jump through hoops to implement these ideas. There are no seminars to attend, no difficult conversations, no waiting. These are things we can do right away, and they make a difference. And today we're going to talk about an easy way that you can shed your resentment over a failed relationship. Our story comes from Judith Guarnera, and it's called We Did Our Best. It's from Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Forgiveness, which is a book I seem to talk about a lot because it's an endless source of great stories for me to pass on to you. So imagine this scene. The front door slams. Judith opens it and looks out and sees her husband of almost 30 years tromping across the front lawn. He looks back at her in the doorway, and he quietly says, "You're wrong, you know. There was never anyone else but you. No one, ever." With those words, he disappears into his car. Judith starts crying, and she starts thinking about the early years of their marriage and how in love they were. They had built a life together, going through all those startup years, you know, the ones when you scrabble the money together to buy a house, you have those little kids, you live simply, but it's a joint effort, and you do it together. Then, somehow, Judith and her husband started to grow apart. When they became empty nesters, Judith finally got to finish her college degree, something that was personally fulfilling, but it didn't seem to change the negative path their marriage was on. Judith said they were very different people. She was outgoing and not afraid to share her opinions, and her husband was quieter and more introspective. When they eventually decided to get a divorce, it was acrimonious. They battled endlessly, and they said a lot of things to each other that could never be taken back. And now, here's where our great Tuesday tip comes in. After the divorce, Judith joined a support group, but she was still stuck. She hadn't found a good way to shed all of that resentment and anger. She hadn't found a way to move forward with her life until a speaker came to address the group one day. And here's what the speaker said to the group. "Repeat after me. In my marriage, I did the best I could." So everyone in the room said it. "In my marriage, I did the best I could." And then the speaker told them to say, "My spouse did the best he or she could." And now there was silence. No one was willing to say it. So the speaker started to persuade them, saying things like, "Who would choose to do their worst?" And the speaker was right. And I think back to whatever relationships have failed for us, a marriage, a friendship, a work situation. We know we did our best. So why can't we assume that the other person did his or her best too? He or she might not have done a good job, but if they were trying, we can put the whole experience into perspective. So Judith thought about this a lot, and she realized that her husband probably had done his best, just as she had. She said that when she thought about her past, she realized it was all made up of her best efforts, and so was her husband's past. I love that story. The moment you realize that the other person was most likely doing his or her best too, it gives you a new perspective. It's much harder to stay angry if you accept the fact that you both tried and failed. Well, that's our easy perspective-changing tip for this Tuesday. We'll meet again tomorrow for Wow Wednesday, which means we're going to share a very cool story that I'm sure will make you smile. It's about a tough urban community that rallies around an old lady and a dog. It's one of those stories that will make you feel good about people. I'm Amy Newmark, and I want to thank you for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. Please let your friends and family know about it. And if you have family members like mine who are new to podcasts, show them how to use podcasts on their phones or their computers. And if you'd like to read more stories and life tips from the book I mentioned, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Forgiveness, please go to our website, chickensoup.com.